Oh,
Okay.
Check 1 2 1 2.
sorry.
Okay.
This other one has to be plugged in. That's for your function.
Oh, so the Zoom, because I have separate speaker. But the Zoom. Okay, yes. Let's see if we can find another. Oh, I got one was on.
They from downstairs for office.
Okay.
And you should have, I believe,
Okay.
I got one that.
Okay. So it's gonna start in a couple of minutes, but
Yes.
just pause, it'll play, I guess.
We got a lot going on. I got the office. And this right now is a 2-person team, so.
I'm talking, because I'm in the session tomorrow.
So I was rushing before I left. I didn't do anything yesterday, travel day. And I just
Oh, man, I was on a call most of the time.
I was tired.
The team's on the way down.
Yeah.
So I was like, so we trying to, we budget. Still trying to get stuff together for the budget.
Oh, okay, so that's the present, okay, cool.
I mean, so the budget has set, but now we're trying to get like, the impacts. Get like people in place and all that kind of stuff. So,
Oh, okay.
but especially because we got people paying price for the new fiscal year,
Yeah.
for the pay period,
Yeah.
try to get people set up. With money you can't. So,
Right. Do we know if that issue ever got resolved with Jalen? Was she-
I never heard back from HR. Yeah, so right now she's turned. Sorry, but yeah, HR, HR's going to trials.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, she hasn't
So-
been available that much anyways to do another full-time internship in New York.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, and she, I mean, and she is just this weird. She said, she's still going to your school. She's like,
Where did she go? Where did she go? She not. Where did she go to? Okay.
yeah, so she's going to your school
Yeah.
Yeah, and so she's like, I don't know if she ever cashed her check.
She never cashed her.
I don't think she did.
Why not? She's.
Oh,
Bless her. So she's young. She can think like that, but that's no.
I just want to make sure I have one cash tag.
yeah. Oh, sweet, thank you so much.
Excuse me. I don't think it's me.
So.
What you mean by it?
Oh, yeah, that's done. That's
I'll be watching you.
I was watching you.
All right now. When I grab my bag and start to move, I want to see you.
Okay.
Do something.
So they put this barrier up between us, so if I dove at you, I wouldn't be able to get to you.
Better hope you land.
You coming down?
Better hope you land. Land and start flapping your wings. Now you'll be back. You'll be able to tell it. Hey. Jenny. Yes, but Mary.
It's 1:47 right now. Start a couple minutes. Give folks a couple minutes to trickle in, or does it look like people are mostly like in their sessions now? So do we- Oh, okay. I mean, I can't see the hall, so I don't like.
This is just some people walking by.
Okay. And then do we need to send her on the sign-in sheet, or did everyone sign in already? Yep,
No.
okay.
Where's the sheet outside?
Right, no, right there?
Oh.
Order desk.
That means she did something right this time.
Look, I need to cry. If I just like start crying out, and you're like, okay,
Yes.
let her cry.
Dad, you really know her? I don't know her.
And you look familiar though.
I mean, that's really what it is, but
She
you.
works up there. I just sort of-
15 years, what's your name? Like, you look really familiar.
Yeah.
She's an NC, I think she's an NCPC. Sharon, what's your NCPC?
I was in SHLI for a long time, and I
SHLI.
just moved over to AA.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I'm sure I've seen you.
I know, I've seen you.
Yeah, no, but I love you.
Actually, let me go. I was actually came to school.
Okay.
I'm gonna go down to the end.
Back in.
I graduated in 2005. Okay, I know the name. Oh, yeah. Oh, I work at you. Yeah. I'm in the PA department, but she's like, what's the other hours? Oh, yeah. My parents to retire. That's a yes.
They'll call her back.
Well, my father waited like this, it was like 90 days, or so, like, he retired before he like went home, so. Yeah. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Oh, great. Okay, well, thank you. So we'll go ahead and get started. There might be some more people trickling in. But welcome to our session this afternoon on cultural competency and health equity. I saw a lot of you at the earlier talk that on culture and so just so you know, this is going to be a different presentation, right? So in the previous session, remember we kind of like went over some nuances of what culture is, kind of like checked our biases. In this one, we're going to be more geared toward the concept of health equity, and we'll introduce you to the concepts or reintroduce you to the concepts of the social determinants of health and the political determinants of health. We'll show how they are all kind of interconnected to promote health equity. And since we're here to talk about teenagers, we will talk about how we can apply some of these frameworks to our work with adolescents and promoting health equity. So I also have a vocabulary quiz. So if you're anything like me, and you may or may not be, sometimes you have a conversation with a young person, you're like, what did you just say? Okay, so that happens to other people, great. So we'll kind of test your knowledge. So you got one person two having a conversation. Person one says it's outside. Person two says that's a move. This person two saying yes it is. No it isn't. I don't like your attitude. Or how does that make you feel? Okay. Yeah, you know you're like it's A. Yes, it's A. Yeah, just kind of keep things in mind, kind of like listening in the background for the young folks talking in code. And they'll be like, I love you. So health equity, I just flashed the definition there, but when you hear the word health equity,
Equal access.
equal access, okay. Anything else? Matching resources to need, good. Any others? Is anyone not familiar with the concept of health equity? Okay. So health equity, according to the CDC, is when everyone has the opportunity to attain their full health potential and no one is disadvantaged from achieving this potential because of their social position or other socially determined circumstance, okay? So this is a frequent concept that comes up. You may have seen an image like this, similar, there's a lot of adaptations out there, between equality and equity, okay? So equality in this case is having everybody ride the same bicycle regardless of whether or not the bicycle fits them or if they can even use it due to their the range of their physical ability, okay? Equity, you still want everyone to ride a bicycle. And in the equity, everyone is riding a bicycle and everyone is able to ride the bicycle because they are matched with the bicycle that is most appropriate for them to be able to ride the bicycle, okay? So another kind of like real life example would be, say you have a low income client population and in order to help facilitate childcare, you give them vouchers, okay? And you've partnered with this childcare center and it's part of the contract that anyone who enrolls their kid there gets a voucher, all right? Then the neighborhood starts to gentrify, okay? And people are like, oh, if you put your kid in this daycare here, they'll give you a voucher for it, so we don't even have to pay for it, okay? So you had a family come in that was prepared to pay child care costs, but they're like, well, cool, we don't have to pay it now, right? So what's that? So that's equality, right? So everyone gets the voucher. What's the equity issue with that?
Somebody that really needs
Some money.
when you can mean to pay for it.
Yeah. So somebody else comes along and is like, oh great, I heard about this place, I'm really desperate, you know, COVID, jobs, blah, blah, blah. Oh, we just cut it off, right? So now somebody is gonna be turned away. But then you've got this other family that's like, well, why should we have to pay? You're like, well, because you can, right? Because are we all in this together? Maybe, maybe not. Okay. Here's another, again, variation on a commonly appearing image that again demonstrates the difference between equality and equity. So equality, everybody gets a box and they can watch the game, except this little guy here still can't. And then equity, you see everyone's heads equally above water. So they're given what they need when they need it for the purpose of what they're trying to accomplish, okay? Then you've got reality. So you've got one person way up on a big old stack of boxes. You got the other one who's barely got his head over the fence. And then you got another one who's like kind of losing ground, literally. So what does this kind of make you think of in terms of health equity? Okay, so say a little bit more about that.
Well, given where they are, you're looking at it from a standpoint of where they are, and how do you best assist them? It's individualized, so the approach has to be individualized.
Okay, so the approach is individualized. So with okay, so
I look at it a little different.
Yeah.
okay.
So I look at also the equality part, and the second, so reality is people who already have like a leg up and they're getting more access and have an opportunity for this, when in reality, someone who's already below ground will get that extra access and they're going to get that.
Yeah. Any other comments around that? Or other folks nodding, kind of thinking along the same line?
Similar notion, it like captures, privilege and stuff and all that.
Right. Yeah. So say this one has inherited all these boxes from their parents and grandparents and great grandparents. And so by the time they got to the baseball game, they're like, I am set. And then, maybe you've got one generation of inheritance. So somebody who may be kind of just like getting established, starting along, or maybe you've got one of those young entrepreneurs there who managed to kind of bring his own box there at such a young age. And then in reality, this, so this little guy right here, what's his reality, right? Like, does he get enough attention at home? What are some other competing needs that he has? Is there food? Does he experience food insecurity or housing insecurity, right? Is he exposed to ACEs, right? So we're mostly familiar with the list of ACEs, adverse childhood experiences that he may already be experiencing. So even assuming that he, makes it to this age right here, he's still got a long way to go to kind of like, build his box up. And it doesn't look like anybody there is necessarily willing to lend a hand. Okay, vocabulary quiz. Oh, by the way, I just switched jobs recently, and so I don't have cards yet, so the QR code goes to my LinkedIn page. So next vocabulary quiz question. What do you think of that new song? It slaps. Does that mean it's terrible, it's awesome, it has a good beat, or the lyrics are too violent? That's what it means. So if something slaps, it's awesome. I consulted a public school teacher on some of these words, and yeah, she actually had to kind of check back in for a second. She's like, "Oh wait, it's still summer. I don't know." Yeah. Okay, so social determinants of health. So what do you think of? What comes to mind when you think of social determinants of health?
Education.
Access, education, transportation. Yeah, stability.
Finances.
Pardon?
Finance, income.
Finance and income. The others?
Life circumstances.
Yeah. Okay, good. So social determinants of health, SDOH, these are the conditions in the places where people live, work, learn, and play. They affect a wide range of health and quality of life risks and outcomes. So you've already mentioned a few. So specifically for those of you who are on the ground working with young ones, what are specifically some of these SDOH in the communities where you live and work that can promote health equity among adolescents? Stress management. So tell me a little bit more about that.
Providing mental health support resources in the community, being involved with, visiting private complexes with, kids that are in the social development resources, just mental health support resources for the community, making sure that they have Medicare, to, apply for those things for them. So just kind of meeting there so that they can get to those places that provide that mental health and emotional support.
Okay, great. So a lot of ideas around, are these things that like are already in the community or sort of like your wish list?
Wanting to do stuff, providing.
Okay, great. So, so the social determinants of health. So we were talking about all these different ways that we can promote health equity among adolescents in that population. The need, the outcome is mental health, right? What are the social determinants of that? What are the conditions in where those kids live, where they learn, where they work and play that are gonna affect those outcomes? Yeah, so what do you think would be some of the, if I can put you on the spot again?
Absent fathers, being raised by grandmothers, am I getting some stuff? Yes.
Yeah, definitely. So something kind of like your household.
Household.
Yes. So being in foster care.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. You heard, I heard you say earlier about like the communities where they live. So tell me about like their dwellings.
Low poverty areas, low poverty stricken areas, places that high poverty, I'm sorry guys, high poverty areas. I don't know, y'all help me out.
Education for schools.
Pardon?
Quality education for schools.
Excellent, yeah. So the quality of education, so do you have those adequate supplies? You have books for everyone, are they up to date? Do they have accurate information? Sorry.
You're good. That's good.
Yeah,
that's right.
Gigi, were you about to say something?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that what Tiffany was thinking about the social determinants, which often can be like challenging, disadvantageous things, but then you throw a twist at the end of that question by asking those things that can promote. So I would think of things like what elements of the community and the environment can foster mental health. Like maybe it's they're limited in terms of financial access or the quality of housing, but there's a strong sense of community, a village, a kinship, a sense of belonging that can help that young person to feel like they have their people who are for them.
So a centerpiece, we partner with an organization in youth, which is more than conversing, and income, right? If it's low income, we pay the youth to come to the actual classes. So we pay them to give them gift cards to attend. So that helps.
Yeah, okay, great. So that's one of the social determinants. So you're addressing the issue of lack of access, whether it's you're just paying them for their time, or if you're covering like transportation or childcare or anything like that. So that's kind of helping to, infuse those resources to promote health equity. Good. Okay. Is this making a little bit more sense to folks?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any other comments that anybody wants to throw out related to this? Okay, cool. Okay, so this kind of depicts how these different determinants of health affect outcomes, okay? So the determinants are made up of socioeconomic factors, the physical environment, health behaviors, and healthcare, so actual access to care and quality of care and quantity of care. You would think that healthcare might account for more, but when you've got all these other factors that are affecting access to care, so you can see some of these socioeconomic factors include education, job status, family social support, income, and community safety. The physical environment, that kind of feeds into that, right? So the physical environment, the socioeconomic factors like education. So you mentioned the quality of the schools, right? So what kind of jobs are available, and what are the hiring practices around there, like implicit and explicit, right? We mentioned kind of having that village or that social support, et cetera. And between the socioeconomic factors and the physical environment, that can go back to about 50% of what your health outcomes are is going to be able to be directly traced to that environment. So in your zip code, basically, right? Health behaviors definitely also account for quite a few health inequities, but we also know that there are major disparities even when health behaviors are more or less, in line with what we're supposed to be doing, right? So to get to the next slide then, so this is where we say your zip code is a better predictor of health than your genetic code, right? So you might think like, oh, I'm pretty unhealthy, my mom has diabetes and, my dad had a stroke or whatever. So I may, yeah.
I'm gonna cut you off. The picture that you actually have up is in St. Louis, that's the Delmar Divide. I grew up in the red portion, and once you cross that one street, the average income, the median income actually rose significantly by almost $200,000 a year per capita. Growing up, nobody told us not to go to the blue. You just kind of knew, like when we sold candy, you didn't go there. When we ordered a pizza, we had to pick it up at Delmar. That one street connects one part of the city to the other. That red portion is now being, they're trying to gentrify and pull the Central West End further north.
Wow. Thanks for sharing that.
But I actually grew up there. My street is a big building right near Fountain Park. Fountain Park is the worst part of St. Louis. Most people think Ferguson because of the Mike Brown situation. No, come to Fountain Park. And my presentation, I got another presentation where we're talking about that Delmar Divide. I think the incident with the McCluskeys, they're the family that pulled the gun on the protesters. They stay in the blue, like actual mansions are in that blue area. And then once you cross this one street, it's like, and basically there's no restaurants, grocery stores, we have health, basically what you're saying, that health issues that we have is because of the resources that are right there for us. There's no adequate record. There's a liquor store on every corner. There's no Whole Foods. Wow. There's no nothing for you to adequately eat. And then they wonder why we have high blood pressure and hypertension and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great debate. Yeah, good job. Yeah. Why don't you just come up and finish the talk?
Gotcha.
I think I can move on to the next slide.
Yeah. No, when I seen the picture, I have that picture in my presentation. That's why when I saw it, I instantly knew what it was.
There you go. There we go. Okay, so your zip code's more important than your genetic. Okay. All right, next quiz question. Okay. How much you pay your plug? 2K singles. Does that mean, how much did that extension cord cost? $20. What was your electric bill last month? So much that I only have $2 left. What do you think of plug music? It's stuff that single millennials like. And how much does your drug dealer want for that? $2,000. Yeah. Right? And I don't even know plug music, I just can't know. Yeah, so a plug is a drug dealer, and 2K singles means $2,000.
I mean, I'm just saying, when you get in a rural area, plug means different. Some kids call you their plug because not necessarily always the hookup, but the person that they count. My kids. They'll come to me and say, that's my plug. Because I'm their go-to person. I'm their resource. I'm the person they count on the most, even before their parents.
Oh, yeah. That is great. Like, I like that a lot because, we're talking about cultural competency and health equity. Right. If you're in a rural area treating someone, you're like, I got to call my plug. You're going to call your plug.
Ladies up front, this is what we were talking about with steel and punch.
Please.
True story.
Tell the story.
So I got expelled from high school, but no, it was very interesting. For one word though, in the fight, the teacher, I said, let me go before I steal you. In St. Louis, that's terms for punch. The teacher put in the suspension, I said, I will kill you. I got a 43-day suspension. But that's why diversity matters, because you need someone to explain these things to the powers that be. That's why you have to have people from all walks of life at the table, be able to explain you to say, that's not what he was saying. He was saying he punched you. If you didn't let him go, not kill. Kill sounds a little more serious.
Absolutely.
That's why when dealing with individuals dealing with law enforcement and police, it has to be diversity training, because in my community, when we talk loud with our hands, that don't mean we gonna jump on. And we know that, but other folks might not.
Yeah.
You know, and they get scared and they feel like, that's how we got to the point from. Right.
Actually, that reminds me of a story. I grew up in Ohio and I went to college in South Carolina. And I was with a friend of mine the summer before I went to college. We were in Ohio. She had lived an earlier part of her life in Texas. And so she was telling me that when I went down south, this is in the 90s, that coming out parties were a huge thing in the South. And I'm like, really? I wouldn't have thought about that. Like, really? That's like a thing? Like, they support that down there? And she's like, I met debutantes.
I'm from Atlanta, so you really had it.
I know.
Okay, coming out.
So now we're going to move on to the political determinants of health. Now, this is a little bit of a newer, kind of growing in popularity concept when we're talking about health equity. Who is familiar with the concept of the political determinants of health? Okay, just a couple people. Okay, cool. All right, so now you're going to learn something. Okay, so political determinants of health. These involve the systematic process of structuring relationships, distributing resources, and administering power in ways that either advance health equity or exacerbate health inequities, okay? So when we talk about the social determinants of health, so like you got health right here, okay? And so you've got like, you know, your good health, so like, okay, your blood pressure is great, you know, but maybe we want to get your weight down a little bit, okay? So that's health, okay? The social determinants of health, you know, what's contributing to, you know, the good cardiovascular health, but maybe the excess weight, okay? The political determinants of health. So we think of the social determinants as the causes, okay? The political determinants are the causes of the causes. Okay, that makes sense to folks?
Yeah.
Okay. So similar question. What political determinants of health would promote health equity among adolescents? And I think when you were talking about the mental health wraparound services, you were kind of hitting on a lot of those things. So are there any other examples folks can think of, you know, like applying the your actual work? So thinking about the communities where you're working. What are some political determinants of health that would promote health equity?
We already talked about access.
Pardon?
We already talked about access, right?
Yeah, so access. So what are the political, like, what's going to politically determine the extent of the access that someone's going to get? Yes, policies, right?
Funding.
Policies, programs, funding. Say more about policies.
I mean, everything is based on, you know, what policies are in place to protect or support or encourage a behavior or prevention of a behavior, intervention of services. So I think a lot of it's got to be political, of course. And, you know, a lot of it is deep rooted, you know, just one thing is especially the abortion issue, you know, that is a political issue, but it's also a personal issue. But those lines are being defined, I guess redefined now through our government, through our Constitution, our Supreme Court. So policies are important, you know, how, you know, even another policy, how we change the breast cancer, the screening process. Who makes the determination of when to get screened, who to screen, who not to screen, and who's gonna pay for it, how it's gonna get covered, right? So all those policies are important.
Good. Any other thoughts around that?
Mental health space, like the thing about the recent policies around mental health. And 13, what that opens up in terms of access, so that's one kind of intervention, but also some of the work that we do is zeroing in on churches and faith leaders. And it's this idea that as health professionals and people who are bringing different programs, we may have the right message or resources, but we're not always the best messenger. Yeah, being those people who are already trusted in the community.
Absolutely.
Help to bridge access that way.
Translate.
Arm other people to go forward.
Yes.
And when you think about it, a lot of when COVID happened and a lot of the grants and the funding that came, they gave it to bigger institutions that reached bigger numbers of people because they already knew that they were in the proper position to make sure that the people got it, which meant some of the bigger organizations like your churches, people still felt safe in the churches and in certain places that were able to already be there and get the people. So you want to go to where the people are going to be, and it's going to be strategically placed.
Sororities.
Oh, yeah. And also the churches had space, had rooms, had parking lots. So you're looking at all of those determinants.
Excellent. Great. Okay, these are all really good ideas. And so we're kind of like, you know, creating this like web of these social and political determinants. And so hopefully you're getting a little bit of an idea of the complexity around these issues. But to kind of further illustrate that, I've got a short video.
Tag people, where are you? Yeah.
What's wrong?
I'm trying to get the video to appear on that screen.
Click on it. You know, it was blank.
The PowerPoint has been acting up on this computer lately. So let me try.
You want me to get one of the tech guys?
Maybe. Let me try one more.
I get it.
Okay.
No, I'm gonna get them, the people that know what they're doing.
You ain't been thinking that.
This is the intermission.
And where'd you say you were from?
I live in Atlanta. I work for Morehouse School of Medicine.
Where you from?
Oh, where I'm from originally, Cleveland, Ohio.
That's what my family did.
Oh, yeah? All right. There you go. What just happened?
It changes.
Oh, okay. Maybe that's what we was.
Is anybody on virtually?
We couldn't get on.
No.
So, no one else is on
Kim was
virtual
killing
either.
Oh.
I said,
Okay.
oh, just one of them. Because I didn't want to leave her. And we were both trying to get in, it kept asking for a passcode. And so we went around the tutorial and she was like, no, that is passcode. And she tried
To best grasp the political determinants of health, let's examine a hypothetical example that combines experiences of real people in urban and rural communities. Imagine a 19-year-old woman, we'll call her Jessica. After enduring several miscarriages, she barely survives giving birth to an infant 9 weeks early, the baby weighing only 3 pounds. Her son is placed in the neonatal intensive care unit, the blood from his umbilical cord revealing over 200 toxins. Where did the system fail Jessica and her baby? How and why did these results occur? 3 years earlier, Jessica had left her parents' house. Access to treatment for her dad's substance use disorder had been eliminated when policymakers closed 3 of the city's public community health centers to save money. Contending with his wife's lack of education, neither of Jessica's parents could secure a job with a livable wage, prompting serious and substantial mental health conditions. Jessica moved to a low-income neighborhood in the city. She never knew of the extent of how the appalling conditions of her neighborhood were politically determined. For example, determined to keep housing segregation in place, politicians expended very few resources to build sidewalks, parks, or recreational facilities. Healthcare providers refused to operate in Jessica's community due to poor reimbursement rates for Medicaid. Because they resisted creating bus routes, lawmakers dissuaded grocery stores from operating in the community, preventing residents access to fresh fruit, vegetables, and meat. Simultaneously, policymakers altered zoning laws to permit development of a dump site and a chemical plant, switching the community's water source from a clean river 10 miles away to a nearby polluted river to save money. This water was used to drink, bathe, and wash clothes. It also irrigated the lawn at Jessica's apartment building, adding to the list of pollutants and environmental hazards in her neighborhood. And because her district lacked established tenant rights, the landlord had no interest in improving unhealthy housing practices. Jessica found work as a cashier at the corner convenience store, a job with no employee benefits, including health or disability insurance. Because policymakers rejected proposals to increase minimum wage to a livable income, Jessica often substituted her employer's free snacks policy as a meal, never realizing the effect that high-fat, high-sodium food would eventually have on her or her baby's health. With local politicians striking down an effort to ban smoking in convenience stores, Jessica was constantly subjected to a barrage of secondhand smoke. And when she discovered she was pregnant, no attempt at receiving health insurance coverage was successful. Her non-ACA compliant plan denied her maternity coverage because they viewed her pregnancy as a pre-existing condition. Medicaid, the government's health insurance program for low-income families, denied her coverage for not being poor enough. After finding a ride to the free clinic, Jessica waited more than half a day to be seen by a second-rate physician, a doctor who was condescending and offensive. Realizing she could not afford to take more days off from work, she never went back. At 31 weeks, a neighbor drove Jessica to a hospital ER 20 miles away. Seeing that Jessica was experiencing excessive swelling in her face and ankles, as well as seizures, the emergency team decided to deliver her premature son immediately. Due to complications, her newborn son was sent to the neonatal intensive care unit. Once his organs were deemed mature enough, he was taken off the machines and sent home with severe cognitive defects. And in their apartment, Jessica and the baby were exposed to mildew and cockroaches, causing her son to develop respiratory problems. The landlord refused to remedy the poor conditions, telling her to move if she didn't like it there. Jessica struggled to find early childhood care and access to schools with educational assistance, healthy food options, and other resources needed to thrive. Because their school and community lacked the resources to enable Jessica's son to even barely reach his potential, he dropped out of school after entering 8th grade, just as his grandmother had done, repeating what is surely the ongoing rule of poverty. Jessica's story shows the compounding effect of political determinants over personal responsibility. No matter how reliably Jessica tried to act, structural, institutional, intrapersonal, and interpersonal obstacles stood in her way. Political determinants were pulling strings that prevented Jessica and her family from achieving optimal health and their full potential. What does this mean for all of us? What can we do to improve and mend our community's most damaged systems?
So takeaways from that?
The US uses more than half the world's healthcare resources.
Yeah. Okay, so
So
yeah,
you get it from all walks of life, we get literally from family to occupation, you know, to job, to everything else, health, wellness, well-being, access, everything that you can think of. So,
right.
and the reason why there's no progression, is that there's no change. So if you don't come out of the situation, you won't, if you're in that situation, even when you relocate to a similar situation, because if you didn't get the education, your access to living, where you're going to live is still substantially low. You know, where you go. So if you're on a Section 8 here, just move Section 8, just go to Section 8.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we talk about the concept of health in all policies, okay? So you wouldn't necessarily think of Section 8, for example, as a health policy, but what are the health implications of Section 8 housing? Low income, okay? What else? What are the conditions like?
Being exposed to.
What are you exposed to?
Control.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah, so I mean, you might have, you know, trash piled up everywhere, there's no landscaping. It's like they built these places and then immediately just like left. Yeah, sanitary conditions, you know, very little access to green space. Sidewalks probably aren't that great, so, and the neighborhood's probably not very safe, right? So even if you had like great sidewalks, it'd be like, look, you got a running path, be like, well, that's nice, I'm gonna get shot.
What about the removal of the father? Because some of the Section 8 requirements, single mother and her child.
Yeah. So similar to the situation in the video about her being, you know, so like making this thing only available to like single mothers, like Jessica not being able to get Medicaid for not being poor enough, right? Yeah.
And then you got the aspect of, they might say, well, you know, when it first started, I was thinking, well, maybe, did she do something? Was she using drugs? You know, in her system, and then you heard the story, it was like, okay, it's not really her fault. Sometimes it's the same way with our kids, you know, we sit there and we make a judgment decision based on the outcome what we see, but we don't understand the walk that got them to where they are, that were beyond their control.
Absolutely. Yeah.
The big picture.
One of the things that I'm just gonna throw this out, one of the best things that could happen in our area at one time, the principal decided that he wanted to have the teachers deliver the report cards to the kids' home. He had the transportation director to take the teachers out into the community, and they had to man deliver the report cards. And that was an eye-opener.
Sure.
It was an eye-opener. Some of the kids were beating them to the door so they didn't have to show what was going on behind the door. Neighborhoods was, you know, one of the best neighborhoods, but it was something that the principal felt like because you go home, the teachers go home to, they're well-to-do.
Best quality of life.
Best quality. But here the kids are coming, and these are the kids that you're trying to teach, you know, and they live in this situation.
We faced that through COVID.
I was gonna say, COVID exposed the disparity, kids were having to do school from home. They didn't have, you know.
Right, we took a bring Wi-Fi.
A lot of them didn't have that, so then, you have to say, we can't do the work. So a lot of them fell off because they couldn't do the work. And then, you know, most of the parents weren't there to support them.
Yeah, they couldn't take their jobs and be like, oh, okay, and you know, what kind of education do the parents maybe have? You know, and even then, if you graduated from high school 20 years ago, with likelihood of remembering geometry.
But some of the kids didn't want to turn their cameras on because they didn't want to show the circumstances of their life. And when they go, sometimes that's what, as a teacher or an administrator, that's something for us to recognize that when a kid comes to school, that may be their own safe space or something positive within their life. Like we think everybody lives like us. That's why the word empathy is used.
Right.
Because empathize with something you may know nothing about just because you live in a community, doesn't mean everybody goes home to the same lifestyle.
Absolutely.
And I don't know about me was doing.
We actually, so our SRO became mobile, meal, Wi-Fi, computer, like we had daily assignments through our equity and diversity division, where they literally were taking kids food, because some of those kids, they ate, the only way they ate sometimes was school. So they literally, we made a mobile thing to make sure they still was good.
A lot of kids only, that's, and I hate to say this, but people don't understand, there are a lot of kids that come to school just to eat.
Right.
So it's their only meal.
Yeah.
It's really their own meal. So when, so when we had this little breakdown, that really hurt a lot of them.
Absolutely.
And they were too embarrassed to say it, you know?
Yeah, and how's that gonna affect their ability to learn?
Right.
Yeah, or they eat ramen noodles, which is full of sodium.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you need healthy food to have a healthy life, right? Did you have your hand up in the back? Yeah, okay. Excellent. Okay. Any other comments or reflections, takeaways from the video?
Pregnancy is a pre-existing condition.
Oh.
I know.
Wow,
Yeah. Are you worried
Yeah.
that we want
So he said, so the narrator said that the health plan was non-ACA compliant. Okay, so really, I mean, I guess there's still, I'm not an expert in this, but I think that like there are like non-ACA compliant plans that you can get. Because even the ACA ones can still be pretty expensive. But prior to the ACA, this was common practice, remember, right? So yeah, pregnancy, or even being a female would be a pre-existing condition, because they'd be like, well, she's.
Based on what he was saying, I know that there's situations where these kids are misunderstood. So what about teachers going home with these kids? I had a situation right before COVID came about where a child was going before the board, the tribunal, to be put out of school forever. This child had gone to sleep in his classroom, knocked out sleep. The teacher came by and woke him up. When the teacher woke him up, he immediately turned around.
So you had a trauma
But they did
response.
not try to investigate and find out why this kid did it. That was not a reaction of violence.
No, it was a trauma response.
No, I talked to him. He was asleep, he had been up all that night, making sure that his mom, who was a prostitute, the dudes that was coming in his house, he can't sleep at night. He got sisters. So he stayed up all the night long to make sure that don't nobody get to his sister. So when he gets to school, all he want to do is eat and go to sleep. When she touched him, he swung around like I begged him. This is not a kid that needs
That's PTSD. That's like. Waking up like this.
And put him out of school. I mean, that just broke my heart because the people that were on the board, they had no idea where this kid came from.
That's why you have to have people with seats at the table.
Yes.
Able to explain and understand different walks of life.
Absolutely.
Everybody, it's just like you showed those slides in the beginning, everybody don't come from the same, everybody can't see the same, everything's totally different.
Yes, that's why, yeah, to your point, representation matters. You also mentioned, post-PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. That's absolutely why that kid, and I don't even know anything about the situation other than what you just said. I hear kids are sleeping all day. Yeah.
And you can imagine he's in defense mode because they might have tried him.
Yes.
Because he might have been sleeping and that was a trigger. Oh, somebody touched me.
A lot of these kids are in the defense, especially these young black boys. I work with boys. And young black boys, men that work with them, it almost takes us 6 months to a year to break through that force field. Forget teaching them something. You got to get him to trust you so you can even be close to him.
That's true.
Because he's been abused, he's been traumatized, he's been told that men ain't nothing. Man, he might do something to you. So ain't no giving him a hug. I tried to give a kid a hug one time. He was like, hey. Now I had to think about that because the generation I came from, you were a kid. Now where he came from, he didn't get that. Don't put your hands on me, old man. No, that's what he told me. And I respect that.
And that's why it's great that, we've got such a diversity of ages in here, right? So, because what we're seeing from these vocabulary slides, the cultures of the, every subsequent generation are so different. And what we were talking about, in the previous session, around, the village, and then that's there, but like, and that in previous generations, it would be perfectly normal for your neighbor to discipline your own children.
Yeah.
And you come home and you're like, oh, thanks, neighbor, not like,
Oh, you get to.
Right.
Right, right.
Yeah. So that's why it's important, to kind of like understand, culturally, like where these kids are coming from also, right? So just kind of understanding like what are the norms, just kind of looking at things like around boundaries. Even like, I can give an example about like, having seen just vast shifts in media representation. Okay, and my research is particularly around women's issues and feminist issues, and I can see like profound changes over the last 10 to 20 years in media representations around things like consent, around things like older adults and sexuality, right? So I see these things, and I'm like, and then there's like things that are like, you watch something that's older, you're like, oh my God, like, that would never fly, kind of certain portrayal or something. Yeah.
I think I find the gratefulness of COVID create a cradle of comfort because the issues have always been there.
Yes.
But because we have this COVID, we can say, well, because of COVID, these are the numbers, right? Of course it got worse, but I feel like the gracious part about COVID is that if we're in this cradle, we're gonna say it's COVID's fault. We're gonna say this is what happened. While we're in this cradle, okay, how about this issue? How about that issue? Yep, this started too. Now can we fund these things?
Because you can kind of like scaffold it around like the need, like
I feel like
COVID,
it's been easier to discuss things than say COVID.
Sure.
But access was a thing with internet at home before, but because of COVID, now it's like we have to do something.
Right.
So let's give them, but we could do that before COVID.
Right, because then you kind of you're saying, you're like, oh, these numbers show disparities, but based on, COVID was in everyone. Okay, this is a horrible pun. I didn't mean to say that. I was like, COVID was in everyone's faces. I'm sorry. So there's not going to be, a policymaker at the table that's going to, there are policymakers at the table that are like, COVID's a hoax.
Yes.
But, 1 million dead Americans can't be wrong. And so, everyone's aware of COVID.
Yes.
Right. And so when you kind of get into something that the policymakers, who are like worlds away from the people for whom they are making policies, get them something that they can see, that they can wrap their minds around, and you're more likely to get action, right? To your point, like, oh yeah, there's disparities in, food insecurity, and then you tack on like COVID, because it's true. And it was also true for them.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Good. Thanks, Jean.
I think that gets to something that I hope we get better at as people who work, in communities with groups that often don't get the supports and resources that they need. Politicians talk a lot about not missing a good crisis or something like that. They see political opportunity in every crisis. I think there's health equity opportunity in every crisis. Sharon knows this, but my work is in disasters and humanitarian emergencies. And my work is strategically focused in that space because, if I take Haiti as an example, where I'm originally from, and started that work post-earthquake in Haiti with 200,000 people died. And this is a place where we might talk about here and, Black communities here, how mental health has been taboo, It really was the case in Haiti that's almost exclusively thought of as like Texas, somebody with a spell on the person, the medical model when mental health is not there until this earthquake happened and you literally had people lost their minds walking the street. And something you couldn't look away from, it was so in your face. And so I think when there are these moments of like major like crisis and bells are ringing, it's an opportunity for us to take those disparities and make sure we get the resources to address that need.
Yeah, Gigi has done some really
And I'll be talking about tomorrow.
Shameless plug. So yes, Gigi is our plug. Just, So kind of wrapping things up a little bit here, kind of winding down. We have a little bit of time. Okay, so next question, and you guys already know this, because they said it in the last section. So person one says, she really said that, and person two says, no cap. Person two has said, I don't know, just kidding, I'm not lying, or yes, she told me to take off my hat.
See. Not lying. Okay.
Know that,
Okay.
okay.
You may or may not have been wearing a hat. Okay. So thinking about microaggressions. So this is another sort of buzzword, kind of fun things to talk about lately. So this is the original concept of microaggressions included this model. And so this is talking about racial microaggressions, but we'll see in a moment that there are microaggressions related to other axes of identity. Okay, and so it's these multiple layers of how they function, right? So there's how they actually happen. Okay, so there's the verbal manifestations, the nonverbal manifestations, the environmental manifestations. So if we want to talk about racial microaggressions, what will be some verbal manifestations? Yeah.
They're very articulate.
Yes, you're very articulate. Yeah. What if someone like me goes up to me like, I can't touch your hair. Yes, right, yeah, they're about to kick me out right now. Right, nonverbal manifestations.
Grabbing a purse.
Grabbing a purse.
Grabbing a purse. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So just kind of like automatically perceiving that person as a threat because of what they look like. Yeah. Okay. You know, like also, you know, not looking people in the eye when you're talking to them. Not using courtesy titles. You know, things like that. And then environmental manifestations. Those. Environmental. Okay, so what if Whole Foods said that they were doing a special for Juneteenth? Do I need to finish this sentence?
Walmart,
Yeah,
Walmart.
yes, the same Walmart, I just couldn't for Juneteenth, yes,
Yeah.
yes. What, no, okay, so that's a good example of the environmental microaggression. Okay, now the types of microaggressions include insults, assaults, and invalidations. Okay, so the micro insults could be unconscious. It says communications that convey rudeness and insensitivity and demean a person's racial heritage. Okay, so any examples you want to share about that? A micro insult. What kind of again saying you're articulate? Like, you know, yeah.
You look nice, big girl.
Yeah.
For your size.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, well, I was in an Uber car one time and the driver was like, oh yeah, you know, I was from, it was a black woman. She's like, yeah, I grew up in North Georgia. People always used to tell me how beautiful I was for a black girl. And I'm like,
Oh, yeah.
no, just like, she was beautiful. She was like, such a beautiful person. So then micro assaults. So these are explicit racial derogations that are characterized primarily by violent verbal, nonverbal, or environmental attack, and to hurt the intended victim through name calling, avoiding behavior, or purposeful discriminatory actions. So I might think about this with the Buffalo supermarket shooting. That's not micro, no, right? Yeah. But these are often conscious. So what would be something that might fall under this? Yeah, like using, or another racial slur that's not necessarily as obvious, you know, as the N-word, you know?
Boy.
Exactly, good, yep. And then micro invalidation. often unconscious, communications that exclude, negate, or nullify the psychological thoughts, feelings, or experiential reality of a person of color.
Why are you so sensitive?
Why are you so sensitive? Yeah.
You seem hostile.
Oh, you're hostile. Oh, you're angry.
What's wrong with the flag? Why you don't like our flag?
Oh, okay. Yeah. It doesn't mean racism. By the way, what's the easiest way to tell whether or not someone's racist?
When they say,
I'm not.
When they say they're not racist.
I got a question. I've noticed, like I told you, I got bused to a white school or suburban school. And I noticed as I've gotten older, people introduce you as a black person by your title of what you do. Almost like saying you're safe. Like, it's Ty, it's my cop friend Ty, like he's good. He's good. That's like, why I can't just do Ty? Why? Once you say that, then people, I don't want everybody to know I'm a cop all the time, because then they start kind of treating you a little different and stuff like that. I want you to treat me as a regular human being. And I noticed that. So it's like, I tell them, don't introduce me. I'm just Ty, I'm not Officer Dennis and anything.
Yeah, see, I was just the officer being a law enforcement officer. I knew getting introduced as Officer Greetings got me in the door, right? Yeah, big black man. He's saying he ain't no regular people. That's right. No, he all right. He ain't one of them.
But that is the same. We basically just did the same
So is that how over here?
I'm off now, so y'all threw it off. But no, I was just gonna say, it on the flip side, when you do have, I'll just say white people or people of other cultures who really are, they're not racist, but they don't know how to come across, and they'll say stuff like, oh, I'm good. Whatever. Oh,
I don't see color.
I don't see color. But then the best way is just not to say anything at all. And you pick up on the bias, but again, being on that side, they don't really know how to approach. And we'll take that to the older generation. Because the younger generation, and I will just throw this in, when I saw when the riots, when all that stuff was going on, doing political younger people from all over the world, I was like, there it is. From all over the world, they did not care. And they supported. So I said at my age, I said, now I like that. You know what I mean? So it's just really trying to see how you cross that, because some people don't see color. They're just straightforward, but they don't really know how to, you know what I mean? So that makes sense.
Just a moment.
And yeah, that makes sense.
We miss being together, I think. Everybody is.
Interact.
We need it. This is therapy. This is our therapy.
Yeah, really.
So microaggressions, I feel like you all are pretty familiar with this concept. All right, and then microaggressions have these. So moving on. So here's an example of some microaggressions. So over here on this side, these are things that says, these are microaggressions that have been hurled at LGBTQ plus folks. Have you ever had real sex? I mean, since she's with a guy, she's a non-practicing bisexual. Right, so like you're bi, and then like you have a different gender partner, then you're not bi anymore. It's just a phase. Who's the man in the relationship? Yeah. You don't act gay. Wow. Yep. I'm not being homophobic. You're just being too sensitive. I said, I'm not being homophobic. You're just being too sensitive. You don't look trans. You're too pretty to be a lesbian. The one in the middle, I scoured the internet. I could not find a good example of an age-related microaggression towards a younger person. There's a lot of age-related microaggressions that are, hurled at older people, the okay boomers, stuff like that. So I put up this quote that says, we're expected to act like adults, yet we're treated like children. This is how being a teenager works, right? So there, to your point that you just made, ma'am, about all these young people who are like coming up around the world, older people, like, they're like, oh, young people don't know what they're talking about, but like, these are your future leaders,
Right.
and they're actually pretty clever.
Well, they're smart. They're growing up in the smartphone age where they can look up.
Right.
So that's the thing with CRT that's pissing people off, because all those lies that have been told, the kids are now, when we keep saying make America great again, there's never been a period when America was actually great. There's always been racism and discrimination and things in place that now the kids are able to look it up themselves.
Yeah.
And some of their the same people that threw rocks and did this stuff don't want it out now because now the world has changed.
Yes.
So now that's taboo. So it's like, don't just let's put the legislation where them boys can't see. And then it's a wrap.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah, so we just recently, like, kind of as a nation. So for instance, we just recently as a nation celebrated Juneteenth. Okay, so it's been celebrated for a long time in a lot of different ways. Okay, to your point, now we have to teach people why we're celebrating Juneteenth.
Right. Right.
Yeah, and it's not because of involuntary relocation.
Right.
Just saying. Okay. So the point is, young people, you're too young to know that. You're probably too young to remember this. Or even like, if somebody is in their middle age and it's like, do you not remember me 20 or 10? Like, I don't know. I don't feel like I'm getting much older. I am, but I can still relate to things like that. I can still like remember how that felt, when I was a young person. And my feelings were just as valid then as they are now, right? So again, those like microaggressions, invalidation, those kinds of things. And then racial microaggressions, and we covered a lot of these. So where are you from? Where are you really from? Where are you like really, really from? Okay. That is targeted towards Asian Americans pretty frequently, right? You're not like other Muslim people. You don't act like a normal Black person. Yeah. Why do you sound so white?
Yeah.
That was normal back in the day. If you were educated, you were brought up to speak the King's English.
Absolutely.
And talk like you white.
Yeah. Because you've been colonized.
It was so bad in my neighborhood that you had to sneak and bring your books home because being smart wasn't cool.
Yeah.
Feel me? So if you came home on the bus with some books, you might get jumped on.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Smart kids they get bullied. People ask me why I sound white all the time. What are you? Like, so kind of like looking like, can't quite figure out what you are. You speak English so well. What do your people think about that? You're really pretty for someone. You're really pretty for someone so dark. Yeah.
Right.
Your name is too hard to pronounce. Can I call you Mary?
Yeah.
I get that.
Oh, you have a nickname? No, this is
Yeah.
I was at a training, I think a couple weeks ago, and the speaker was up speaking, and they asked you guys,
Listen,
yeah, the speaker was asking, the person, to say your name, before you start speaking so that everybody will know. And the person said their name, then the speaker's like, oh, whatever, and dismissed it. And then they went on. I said, oh, hell no. And everybody looked at me like, 'cause I don't use a curse. But that's one of the things that really tick me off when you do that. Even though it may be a little bit crazy.
Right.
But you don't never disrespect them.
Yeah.
To let them know that your name is not even important. Oh no, whatever it is. No, I got up and walked. I said, I can't take this. My nerves. Okay.
and they're probably on the evaluation like, well, that angry Black one.
Yeah, I wrote it too.
Yeah.
Oh,
okay.
Hell no. They look at me like, what the hell? Yeah, I got nerves too.
You spoke your truth. I'm like,
I sure did.
I'm a part of some program that they call Impact to help with law enforcement. person in it. And in the presentation, the first slide was about lynching. And after, when we did this presentation, after the first slide, you know, I'm like, whoa, hold up, time out. As soon as I said it, the guy that, the main person, he said, oh my God, he said, I showed this presentation to over 25 other white people and nobody never said anything. And he made a post about it. He was like, this is why diversity matters. You have to have people. You don't even know that you're offending people. Like some people, like you were saying, aren't really trying to be racist. They truly just don't know. They've never had anybody school them on why something is offensive.
Yeah.
So that's why you have to welcome people that different walks of life to school you. My partner was a lesbian. We were partners for 4 years. She schooled me so much on LGBTQ things that I was ignorant to myself, that I didn't even know that I was saying that was offensive that I might say. And she helped me understand that empathize, shut up and listen and learn something from something that you don't know.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I'll say as the white chick who's worked at a black school for 15 years, I think that there's a lot of people from high school I need to apologize to. So, okay, so now to talk to your comment earlier. So this is kind of like a hybrid model that I put together around cultural competence. Okay, so we're kind of like bring everything together now. So who is familiar with either of these pyramid models? The levels of cultural competence? Okay, so I'll break these down. So on the left side of the screen, I have factors related to interpersonal cultural competence. On the right-hand side are societal levels of cultural competence, and they kind of align with one another here, okay? So the lowest level on this model here, and it's also, you know, representative being a pyramid, you're gonna see that more people are gonna be on these lower levels than on these upper levels, okay? So on this lowest level here is unconscious incompetence. So what that means, that's like blissful ignorance, right? That's not having any intent of being racist or prejudiced, you know, maybe just not having critically thought about like things that you may have heard at home or in your community, or you're just repeating things, and you know, you're not going to know what's offensive unless someone tells you that it's offensive. Okay, so a lot of people are like that. Some people actually take that feedback and try to improve. And on that level, that's developing cultural self-awareness. Okay, so that's when you're kind of taking a step back and you're looking at what are some of the values and attitudes and beliefs and traditions and customs that are related to my own culture, and how might that be different for somebody who is not from the same culture as me? Okay, so but doing that sort of inventory about your self-awareness is a lower level of this social cultural competence scale. Okay, then on the next level, on the individual level, you have the conscious incompetence, right? So that might mean that you may say something homophobic, oh, gay, right? And you have an awareness of the fact that it's offensive, but you're like, oh, well, they're my friends, so like, you know, it's fine, you know. So kind of like knowing that like what you're saying is offensive, but you're not really interested in doing much about it. Who all here has an MPH or has been a political student? Okay, so this is like the pre-contemplation model. Like on the trans-theoretical model, like the pre-contemplation phase where it's like you're not even really thinking about doing anything about it. So on the other side, on the social level, on the societal level, you've got gaining cultural knowledge, okay? So you've got conscious incompetence, so you're saying you're to your gay friend, so it's okay because that's your gay friend. Well, you don't look gay. And then gaining cultural knowledge is the gay person being like, why are you saying that? And so you're like, well, maybe I'll think about this a little bit and figure out why this was offensive, right? Because again, it's not your gay friend's job to school you on homophobia, right? It's not the job of my friends who are not white to school me on racism. Next on the interpersonal side is conscious competence, okay? So now you're aware of sort of like the do's and don'ts, of dealing with diverse people, okay? But you have to be very consciously aware of it, right? So you're going in here, you're like, oh, I need to address this person by this title, okay? I need to, what are other things? Like, okay, I'll just move on. But like knowing that there's certain things you have to do, okay? And then on the societal side, now we're moving from cultural competence to cultural humility, right? So cultural competence being like, okay, I'm like building up like my tools, my knowledge to understand how these processes work. Cultural humility is when you're applying it and trying your best to live it, okay? So under here, you're understanding and redressing power imbalances, right? So you're still learning, you're like, these are why, so like social, political determinants of health, issues around that, you're thinking about like, these are what some of these problems are and we should fix them, okay? And then finally, on the highest level of the interpersonal side is unconscious competence, okay? So that's someone that, may get it, so to speak, right? And it's like, they move from the phase of like, oh, I need to call this person by this title, I need to call this person by this title, and to be like, oh, hi, Dr. So-and-so, I'm sure, right? Not like, hi, right? So trying to, so basically it's second nature to you at that point, okay? On the other side is holding systems accountable, right? So you understand it, you begin to understand and redress those power imbalances. Now you're actually like in the space of doing something about it, okay? So this could mean sort of any kind of political involvement. So say, calling your member of Congress, like writing letters, running for political office, right? So that you can hands-on address these issues. Okay? Yes.
So I know usually like in the community it's not so voting, it has been it's practice. So I'm thinking like more so collective effort to actually out and vote to hold the system accountable and take the candidate and be so we can kind of see that.
Similar, I mean, so you're talking about like going out, like knocking on doors and being like.
Not that canvassing, but again, like usually white people don't vote, all white people don't vote. And so just having to put effort to get out there and go to the polls, taking holding systems accountable.
Yes, absolutely. So kind of, yeah, so any of these collective efforts where you're, your 2 cents, right? Yeah, good example. Other questions around this? Oh, I'm done now. Yes, so that's it. So I hope this was useful.
This was your plug,
Let us take over. Let us be free.
Yeah. Oh no, be free. So yeah. Free to go. But I'll hang out here. Anybody wants to chat? For the rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, shit. See, I don't read. I skipped the line. I skipped
I'll let him.
I can't. It's fine. Just suck my stomach in. I got open. Yeah.
So, I told you.
So good.
Okay, I didn't know like in meetings, I heard it out. That's why. Okay.
That's great, it's great. And you're still working on progress, right?
Okay.
But yeah, like, we're still- Yeah. So, kind of the information is
Most of your stuff,
Excuse me. Thank you. Thank you for coming and for participating in some things. That's some good refreshments. Good. Good. I hope it was useful. Okay. Yes, very much.
Oh, boy.
I got time on me video here.
On to the next, skills will work. Not that much, I did get a lot done. So, I'm like,
Okay.